Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's ASEAN Midday Market Watch. Our guest today is Vishnu Varathan. He's the Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank in Singapore. Vishnu, great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. Always good to be here.
Now, let's take a look at how markets in the region are performing before we get your insights. And if we look at all the markets, in fact, it's a sea of green, sharp contrast to yesterday. Obviously, on the back of performance of Wall Street, Nikkei is at 26,729.42. It's up 0.16%. Shanghai Composite is up 0.18% at 3,373.16. Hang Seng is at 26,422.87. It's up 0.82%. The ASX 200 is up 0.81% at 6,685.2. The Kospi is at 2,768.35. It's up 0.42%. Now, let's look a little bit closer to where we are in Singapore. We have, and just hold on. We've got the SGX trading at 2000, Bursa Malaysia trading at 1,686.23 and the SGX trading at 2,870.86. It's up 0.49%. So Vishnu, what do you make on how markets are performing today versus, especially after yesterday's sea of red?
Well, it does appear that there's some optimism creeping back into markets. Primarily, there could be two components to this. We saw the US regulatory agencies giving Moderna the nod. So now you have two vaccines that could be hitting the ground soon. Also, I think there is a growing sense that the US may be on the cusp of agreeing on the pandemic relief with Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi set to meet. And there's been similar optimism about a EU-UK Brexit deal getting done on trade as well. So you've got this confluence of factors inspiring those sparks of hope. And if I may, I guess markets are in a situation where you can describe them to be the Mark Twain markets. Mark Twain did say it is better to be an optimist who is sometimes wrong than a pessimist who's always right. So I guess markets are in that mood.
Yeah. And so you reckon that a stimulus deal has already been priced into markets, and what sort of so is there any opportunities and for investors to profit from the deal once it's actually been done?
I mean, that's a very good. That's really a very good question, Brian, and I think we can break that down into two parts. So you asked a very pertinent and pointed question that whether it's a matter of it's the case that it's fully priced in or not, and to that extent, I will hazard a guess that it's not fully baked in yet. So between having to choose sell the fact after buying the rumor, my sense is that markets could have a little bit of a follow through champagne popping on this one, especially if the optimism around conditions generally build and markets start cheering for that Santa rally that they are looking for towards the year end.
Now, all eyes are on the Fed meeting later tonight. I think it's about 3 a.m. Singapore time. What are the key things that markets are looking out for that may be coming out of that meeting?
I mean, for us, we flagged up that there are three things to watch with the Fed, whether we want to look at it tonight or so today, US time. The first thing for us is whether there are any indications that the Fed wants to expand its quantitative easing program, basically its asset purchases. And for those looking for this, are doing a side-by-side comparison with the ECB, which recently upped its bond buying program, both in the regular APP and the pandemic emergency purchases as well. Our sense, though, is we are not getting our hopes up too much there because the Fed has pretty much kept to script. They said they would buy about 120 billion a month. 80 billion of that would be US treasuries. The rest would be mortgage-backed securities. They've kept their pace with the USTs, but not with the mortgage-backed securities. Those have fallen back. So they have got capacity to expand. since they are not fully exploiting their capacity, we don't see an urgent need to expand that. The two other important things market will look out for is, one is the so-called dot plot, the median forecast amongst the FOMC members as to when rate hikes are coming. In September, right through 2023, the majority did not see any hikes. So whether vaccine optimism brings that forward, I think that would be a fair thing to assess. The other thing would be the Fed's own forecasts for the economy and inflation. And so these would be the primary things to watch out for. There is a small but non-negligible minority, perhaps also betting on fresh stimulus at this point, but that wouldn't be us. We are sitting with the very cautious conservative majority who think they'll just hold.
Okay, and Japan's numbers came out, export numbers came out this morning, and they've declined 4.2% in January compared to a year ago. Now that was quite a far off the 0.5% rise expected by economists in a Reuters poll. Now, how would investors react to the weaker than expected data? How should we, what could we do, read into this?
I mean, it gets tricky, and really this is the part where it becomes more art than science. There are two things to consider. One is there is probably going to be month-to-month distortions and swings. So whether we are able to look through that, and more importantly, whether we are correct in sizing up some of the subsequent waves of outbreak in Europe and US. So our ability to assess how that impact may fade as vaccines come through. So we will need to form a timeline in our minds about maybe only a mild form of recovery in the first half of 21, with a stronger recovery coming through in the second half. So that could be a narrative that plays out, albeit a bit noisily in trade data.
Vishnu, thank you very much for your insights. We've been speaking to Vishnu Varathan, Head of Economics and Strategy at Mizuho Bank, on BizTech's ASEAN Midday Market Watch. I'm Brian Fernandez. Check out www.biztech.asia for business and technology conversations.